have such sights to show you. We're Poppin the Scary horror podcast here. I'm your host, Coale, and with me, as always, I have my good friend and co-host, Aaron. Aaron!
It's me.
Aaron!
It's me.
Isn't that an Attack on Titan thing?
Maybe.
Where he goes like, Aaron! Aaron! Like,
I no spoilers because I actually just started watching it again.
It comes from the blonde child. I'm trying to think. Armin. I guess in the English dub he says Aaron weird. I only learned about it because I watch Germa 985, there would be times where he's playing and he goes, Aaron!
Yeah, I've got friends that do that to me on Discord.
Yeah, oh, okay.
And I know it's from Germa, but I didn't realize the origin was the Attack on Titan English dub.
Yeah, I
watch it in the original Nipponese.
Oh, I don't blame you. I do the exact same thing as well. I'm more of a sub over dub kind of dude. Same. Specifically, but
I agree.
Oh my goodness, I'm so glad we could agree on it. But yeah, so today we are actually going to be diving into American Psycho, which which I know you actually know lots of bits and pieces from American Psycho since you constantly make jokes to it a lot.
Yeah, I'm ashamed to admit that I've never seen the movie, but I reference it all the time. It's just one of those like internet things, I think since the early days of like 4chans with the Dubs image, you know, like where he points up to the Dubs or whatever. Just like ever since that point, maybe even before then, but that's when it came into my consciousness. It's been like ingrained in internet meme culture, that movie specifically, and I've just, Yeah, and
that was kind of the same thing with me because I had never heard anything about it whenever it had first released. I only knew about it because of the, again, the memes on the internet where it shows Christian Bale just like grinning as he's swinging an axe.
Yeah.
That's about the only thing that I ever had context to. And I've seen this movie once already, and I had just decided to watch it because it was on Netflix. But before then, I never really had any sort of inkling to be like, oh, I got to check this out. But once I started the memes really start circulating and like throwing out references like business cards and everything else, that's where I was like, okay, I gotta check this movie out here.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of like in the same boat. That's where I learned about American Psycho. So it's kind of interesting that we both kind of have the very similar experience whenever it comes to American Psycho and kind of learning about what it was exactly.
Right.
Do you have any expectations for this film specifically?
So even though I know so many bits and pieces, I really don't know what the plot is. I know Christian Bale's like a little bit like off his rocker, and I can gather that from some of the scenes and just like the weird like dramatic nature of so much of even the mundane part, like the Paul Allen, business card scene or whatever. So I guess I have expectations about like the style of the movie based on the clips and stuff. But as far as like plot and characters go, I'm pretty in the dark. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to be. Because I knew about the memes beforehand, and watching the film didn't ruin the experience surprisingly, because there's surprisingly a lot of layers to this specifically, to where you can still know the memes and not know anything about the movie.
Right.
So, we are going to grab our chicken chunks.
Yeah, we got a bunch of chunks of chicken.
Chicken chunks!
And we got some sort of beer. You want to do you didn't show it to me yet.
Oh, yeah.
We always drink an OG original beer of some kind for each movie. We have a unique beer.
Ooh, well, in fact, I you know what? We're going to we're going to do a live reveal.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I'm going to bring it.
Oh, you're bringing it in?
You just
okay.
talk to the audience while I go get it.
All right, I'm going to babysit the audience while he comes by. So every week whenever we do one of these, or every other week whenever we do one of these podcasts, and I come over, we kind of started from week 1 because I had a bunch of beer in my fridge, and I was like, it's kind of thematic, Halloween-y type beer. So I brought some over. And ever since then, we've been doing sort of beer pairings for the movies, right? And some of them are more loosely than others. Last week, or whenever we did My Bloody Valentine, we had like a chocolate beer. it was like a chocolate stout. Cole's back now.
Yeah.
He has the beer behind his back.
Oh yeah.
And now I want to see what we're gonna do for American Psycho.
Okay,
So,
well, here's the grand reveal of today's beer we'll be drinking during American Psycho.
hop to be square. Oh wow, that is really on brand, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. You know, just doing the pointing there.
It's got like that, like that 80s text, like the what do you call it, like vaporwave almost.
Yeah, as soon as I saw hop to be square, I was like, okay, I have to get this. There's no other appropriate time to get it.
A New England style IPA. I'm like hit or miss in IPAs.
Me too.
Because I like, sometimes I'm down for the hoppiness and sometimes I'm definitely not. Usually I'm not like invested in a bitter beer, but sometimes they really hit.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll have to give the review of the beer Hop to Be Square, and then we're going to tell you guys our thoughts and review of 2000's American Psycho. Woo, 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 woo.
You like Huey Lewis in the news?
And we are back from watching American Psycho. Aaron.
Yeah.
What did you think of American Psycho?
That was an experience, to say the least.
The finest experience I could get reservations for at any time. They know me there.
It was impressive. But let's see the 4K remastered experience.
Oh my god. So smooth. Nice Dolby Atmos. Okay, I'm not going to talk like that the entire time. Yes. That, I think it would be grating to the viewers just hearing, the characters in the film were quite interesting to the plot overall.
That's just how it's narrated the whole time. You could be like Patrick Bateman's voice in the head, and I could be him out loud, you know what I mean? So you do that, and then I'm over here like, I really think it was a great commentary on the Wall Street era of the late 80s. And then you'd be like, I didn't think that at all, and I want to murder them.
Oh my god. I want to stab you repeatedly. Before getting into the movie, we drank our Hop to Be Square, and just quick thoughts.
Up.
Yeah, Hop to Be Square. Thoughts on the hop?
It's pretty good. It's you know, I don't have a wealth of experience with IPAs. I've had a few, you know what I mean, local brews or whatever, but it's not really my go-to kind of drink. This one was fairly tolerable though. It wasn't too bitter. Wasn't too strong. Sometimes they really just like you're eating a barrel of hops, and it wasn't that, so it was good for me. But as far as like the extended flavor profile of an IPA, I don't know. They all kind of taste like hop to me. But you know, I thought you couldn't have found a better beer for this movie.
Yeah,
I mean, it's Hop to Be Square.
Yes,
it was a pretty great choice.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, yeah. Overall, I'm mostly happy I just got it for the name specifically. Taste wise, it's like, it's pretty okay. I still stand by that. I think the best one we've had was the Jamaican lager for Friday the 13th we watched.
Yeah, that was just a clean one.
Yeah, it was pretty good. But with American Psycho, I know you kind of went in a little blind. How was it for you?
You know, a lot of things did live up to my expectations because I'd seen a couple of those little scenes before. You know, I'd seen the classic scene where he puts on the raincoat and he's playing what do you call it? Huey Lewis. You like Huey Lewis in the news? You know? I'd seen that, so I got like a taste of that, and then I've seen the note card scene, the business card scene. Let's see Paul Allen's card. Yeah. So like I had gotten a taste for like kind of the weird style and like universe of the movie, but I didn't realize like just how involved that like bizarro like business class universe is throughout, and how like everybody is absorbed into it except for like a couple little minor characters that seem to be detached from that world and like are normal people, and then everyone else is just this like weird hive mind Wall Street yuppie, you know what I mean? And it's like and they just like talking specifically in jargon, and their lives are these weird meaningless things, and they really emphasize that with not only like the settings and the characters and the dialogue, but like just every little granular detail is just this like weird foreign world that they're speaking in, and and Patrick Bateman's just like a part of it, and he's going insane.
Yeah. I envy you, because it took me a second time to watch to really pick up on everything what you got through the first watch through.
I was like sponging it up.
Well, that's good. That's good. I know kind of like some of you who have already seen the movie, whenever it comes to generalizing American Psycho as a horror, it plays on that thin line. It's in its own weird space where it's not pure horror.
No, it's like a suspense kind of. I would say like a thriller, but it's really not even like, there's not even that many moments of like, it's not trying to scare you, really. I don't feel like it. I don't feel like the objective of the movie is to be like scary. Like, when's the killer gonna kill? Because you're following around the killer the whole time. You know?
Yeah, it's interesting perspective. Just because, I mean, I think it's like hard to make a horror movie whenever the killer is your main character, because you know, you see all the steps he's taken, even though the people don't specifically. So
it's weird because normally you'd consider like, all right, like a slasher is like within the larger like rectangle of the square rectangle complex. You got like horror movies, and then within that you have slasher movies. But this one almost feels like a slasher that's not in horror, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and so that's why whenever I was like trying to think of a lineup, I was like, I'm going to say it still counts as horror just because like it has a lot of horror elements. I mean, heck, you even see on one of the televisions, there's Texas Chainsaw Massacre playing on the TV.
Yeah, he's just like casually watching the end of Texas Chainsaw Massacre and the screaming bloody murder while he's on the phone with someone.
Well, and that's a crazy thing too. Like, he was working out, he was doing those crunches, so he wasn't even watching it. He just was hearing.
That was his workout.
Yeah, he was just hearing Sally just screaming at the end of the film.
Right. Sorry, the one that he was watching when he was casually on the phone with someone was Ron Jeremy porn. So.
Yes, yeah. So there's definitely a lot to pick up here. And for those kind of unfamiliar with Psycho as a whole, pretty much the story is it focuses on Patrick Bateman, who is a very rich, successful businessman working in the kind of guppy culture of the 80s overall. And you just follow him throughout his day, but then you start to realize that he is not of a sane mind. And you find it, I mean, if there was zero context of seeing the memes and everything like that, I mean, it starts off pretty subtle and then just crescendos like nobody's business to the end.
Yeah, it really ramps up. And without getting too much into spoiler territory, like, it doesn't even really have a traditional like climax, I would say. We can talk about that more later, but it's like a really interesting pacing for like murders, because it definitely does like it eases you into it, you know what I mean? But then like, I don't know that you ever really get eased out of it. It's interesting.
No, so, and it's like I said, it's pretty straightforward. It's not like super complicated plot. It's just more, again, just a really big dive into Patrick Bateman as a character, which we can dive into specifically. Aaron, whenever it comes to Christian Bale's portrayal of Patrick Bateman, since he is the main character we follow throughout like the entire film, what are your overall thoughts on him?
First off, I love Christian Bale as an actor. Like, I know like the whole rumor on the Hollywood street is that he's a giant fucking asshole or whatever, and he's probably legitimately a little bit crazy in real life, especially whenever you hear about like his body transformations, the insane like amount of weight loss and gain that he does between movies to fit roles, and his like really hardcore sticking to method acting, which I think he's dropping recently. I think he said that in an interview that he's not doing that anymore because it's incredibly unhealthy. But in this time period, he was still method acting. Can't think of a better actor to play the American Psycho, I think. I really enjoy his performances in most movies that I've seen him in. But I think he's a great actor. But he falls in kind of that line of like, I feel the same way about Edward Norton. Like, I know Edward Norton's an asshole, but I just love watching him in movies.
Yeah.
Anyway, in this role specifically, I think, God, he does great with those like. He's like overacting a little bit, but everyone in the movie is like, that's the point, is they're all like overdoing this weird yuppie role that they're all playing. And he's like, you know, he's like the little schmarmy looking fucking smirking motherfucker. He's just like, as white as possible, and he's just like, he's as everything as possible. He's like super fucking ripped just to the nth degree. He's super fucking neurotic to the nth degree. He's super fucking clean cut to the nth degree. You know what I mean? So everything that's about him is like turned up to 100, and it is just like trying as hard as he can to be like perfect in every era, and he's succeeding in the foreground in the beginning of the movie, and then like in the background of his mind he's not, and it slips away. And I think Christian Bale like really does a great job in those kind of roles where he could just like cater to his extremist tendencies.
No, for sure. And it's funny that you said I can't imagine any other actor playing Patrick Bateman. It almost wasn't Christian Bale. So long story short, because this is actually based on a book, American Psycho, so whenever they were adapting it, Christian Bale was definitely highly interested in doing it, and they had gotten an actor on board there to direct it. But then I guess due to like studio or creative stuff,
studio,
yeah, there's like a lot of interference and whatnot. They swapped directors, and the director was like, "Oh, you know who I want for this role? Leonardo DiCaprio, coming straight off Titanic."
Oh, really?
Yeah, so
Wolf of Wall Street it up,
yeah,
and
and that was the thing. Like Leonardo was actually interested in the role. He was like, "Oh yeah, this will help differentiate me from like the lover boy, since he had just played like Jack Titanic, and I was." Trying to avoid typecasting, but I guess due to like creative differences whenever it came to making film, and also the biggest important thing, his agent, I guess, was talking to him saying, "Hey, there's a lot of like women that like you, especially after Titanic, and given the context of this film, I don't think it'll be good. Yeah, good for your image." So that's why he stepped down, and then the director, with Leo, stepped down, and then we got Christian Bale to jump on board as the director, and the director was Mary Herron. To confirm, just to give credit where credit's due.
Yeah.
And I've seen interviews with her, and I really love the way she talks about the film as a whole. Like, you could tell she definitely knew the context of the book, which I haven't read, but she was like very confident in her vision whenever it came to this film, and it's like a tight film. There's like nothing that feels like, okay, why would you throw that in there specifically? It feels like appropriate and necessary for the story.
Right. I feel like that, and not to take anything away from the movie, because I do think it's a fantastic movie. I feel like you could almost like justify every little weird thing in that movie, because the point of the movie is that it's so absurd in parts. You know what I mean? Not that anything does feel extraneous, but I feel like it's almost easier to get away with just like weird scenes. Like when he has the cat at the ATM or whatever. Just like those moments or whatever.
Yeah.
Because like there's an absurdist humor to the entire movie. And so like, of course that makes sense in the context, because the entire movie has that context of just like this bizarro world they live in.
Oh yeah. And it's I feel like Christian Bale handles every scene appropriately. Like, he blends in so well within groups that you believe that he is very charismatic and charming.
Right.
And it's just like one of those guys yucking it up. And then whenever he has to get very serious, mostly whenever he's monologuing to himself, like he just has that cold, dead stare in his eyes completely.
Right. Or like when he's nervous, like around the detective, or like, when something happens that rattles his psyche.
Oh,
like
my
Paul Allen's business card or something. He's just...
Oh my gosh, I totally forgot this. This is another thing I learned about it. Apparently, Christian Bale can make himself sweat on command.
He was sweating through a lot of that movie.
Yeah, it's just... Yeah, mad props to Christian Bale for having such huge acting chops there, specifically, despite, again, whether he's a good person or not. That's kind of up for grabs and whatnot.
Right.
But...
Yeah, just like purely his professional role as an actor. I mean, woo! I love me some Christian Bale.
Oh, well, that's good.
Maybe I'm just like attracted to toxic men or something, because like some of my favorite actors, especially in this era of movies, is like Edward Norton, like Christian Bale, like Tom Cruise, like people that have like complicated relationships with like are difficult to work with. I'll put anyway.
No, yeah, I'm not too fan of the toxic man celebrities there. Like, I like Christian Bale just fine. Tom Cruise.
It's not like I'm like watching their interviews and I'm like, oh, I love these people, because I don't feel that way.
Yeah.
But when I see them on screen, I'm like, oh my god, they always kill it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I think because there's again, I have the firm belief that there's a difference between liking somebody and liking their work. Like Quentin Tarantino, I love his movies. I never want to meet him because he is infuriating.
I don't want him to lick my feet.
Yeah. Yeah, neither do I, buddy. Neither do I. We'll just keep it strictly professional.
Cute feminine feet. I don't want him to do something to me. You know what I mean?
Well, thank you for keeping socks on.
I don't actually. I have medium-sized hobbit feet.
Well, I have large-sized hobbit feet, so we match.
There we go.
Yeah, you're welcome, people that really like feet.
This is now a foot fetishist podcast.
Yes, exactly.
Let's talk about toes. Let's see Paul Allen's toes.
Speaking of Paul Allen and other characters, there's a lot of big names that are in this film, like Reese Witherspoon, Willem Dafoe, and Jared Leto. How did you feel like the supporting characters? Because I feel like they're all supporting characters almost. Like, because I feel like, again, Christian Bale is the main character as Patrick Bateman.
So the whole thing centers on Patrick Bateman, but I feel like almost every other character, maybe with the exception of like Paul Allen or something, is just designed to be, well, even Paul Allen, it's just designed to be this blur of like Wall Street, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's like none of them have distinct personalities. They're all this amalgamation of like, hey, I'm a sexist rich guy. You know what I mean? Like, and like that's the point. And so like, and you just get tossed in, and it's like dinner at this place with these people, and dinner at that place with these people. And I fucked up the reservation here, and it's all like meaningless to the audience, but means so much to the people in the film. You know what I mean? Like Dorsia, you got reservations there. What does that mean to us? Nothing. But like it's life or death for these people. That somebody managed to get a reservation there at 8:00 on a Friday night, and he didn't, and his business card is bone, but that one's eggshell, so it's much different. You know what I mean? Like it's these like the minutia that like doesn't mean anything. It's just like the most important thing about these people's lives. Meanwhile, he's murdering people. You know what I mean? So like that juxtaposition is supposed to be like part of the absurdity of the film. And so I feel like the cast of characters fits right in. Like, who is Reese Witherspoon's character versus the character that he's having an affair with versus the other like random three women. The only woman that really stands out, that's like I feel like designed to stand out, is like the prostitute he hires, because she's like one of the only normal people. You know what I mean? And
Your
she's
name
like,
will be Christy.
Yeah, and she's just you could tell she's just like palpably like, this is weird. The whole everyone she's on scene, she's just like this. I feel really awkward.
No, for sure. I feel like people that are just outside of the overall like rich upper class culture, like yuppie culture, they have more minute deliveries and stuff like that. They're like more reserved, quiet. Like even Patrick Bateman's assistant Gene is just more withdrawn there specifically.
I forgot about Gene. Gene is the other one that kind of stands out as like a normal person, while everyone else is just like in this world. Yeah,
and it's so funny because they're just so over the top, bombastic and everything. And then you'll even see like the waiters who are just very just flat toned.
Right, they're like robots. Yeah.
So it's really interesting seeing that dynamic, and I feel like a lot of the characters kind of serve more as a world that Patrick Bateman projects out onto. And there are definitely some good performances. Like I love the actress who played Jean. I feel like she's a very important role and helps dig deeper into Patrick Bateman's psyche there. And it's Chloe Sevigny, I think.
Yeah, there's an umlaut over the E.
Ooh.
Is it really Chloe? Is it Chloe? Is it Cloaca? I don't know. How do you pronounce that? I'm not German. I don't know how to do the umlauts.
No worries. But it doesn't look like she's been in like super big stuff, but which is surprising because she did a really great job in the film.
And like just pulling up her like IMDb page here, like her face looks familiar, and she looked kind of familiar in that movie, but obviously she's a lot younger then, so I don't know.
Yeah, but definitely it serves an important role. I also love Willem Dafoe's performance, but I'm like a big sucker for Willem Dafoe.
Love Willem Dafoe too.
Like I feel like every movie he comes to, he kills it.
Yeah.
like absolutely slays it. And one thing that was interesting, whenever I listened to videos about American Psycho, with Willem Dafoe, he took two different takes. One where he's asking Patrick Bateman questions, just honestly, straightforward, trying to be friendly, cordial, and another one where he's skeptical of Patrick Bateman's testimony. And guess which one made the cut?
It's the... I feel like they went back and forth.
They did.
I wanted to say skeptical, but I was like, no, I feel like they went back and forth.
No, they mixed the two of them together.
Yeah, you tried to trick question me.
Yeah, exactly. So, and so I thought that was something interesting, the fact that, you know, he had two different motivations behind, but they mixed both of them, which I feel adds perfectly to the film, because it's always just not normal. Like some of the stuff that goes through, even at the beginning of the film where it's very, very, very subtle, it's still just offset from normality, I feel like. So there's always that constant tension that builds through, even though, you know, like, you're following the killer throughout the whole film.
Right. You're, like, going through the rabbit hole, but, like, yeah, they're already so deep in Wonderland that it's like, what is going on? And anytime you get that little taste of, like, rationality from a real person that walks in and it's just like, this is weird, okay.
Yeah.
Then it just, like, reminds you that, like, this is a world they live in. And even in moments, and again, I can't really talk about this without getting too spoilery, but towards the end, there are moments where it seems like Patrick even realizes that he's, like, in another world, you know what I mean? And he's like, this is bizarre. And he kind of gets taken out of it.
No, because I think, like, adapting something like this, I mean, obviously, I heard from the original source material was pretty much close to what the movie came, really? So they didn't stray too far from that. So I've heard it was a very faithful adaptation. Only a few things were changed specifically. I think it's funny because I think the movie had to fight for Huey Lewis in the News, which Huey Lewis in the News was a little skeptical throwing their name on there.
I can understand why, but it's so cool that they did. Because that's just a great soundtrack, and even just a little detail that comes up later with Willem Dafoe, and he's like, Huey Lewis in the News. He's like, you like that album or too black for me? That's just like perfect dialogue of just like how like incredibly white and not like cool these guys are, like all at once.
But the weird thing is like you mentioned stuff like that, but then Patrick Bateman seems to be like the more morally holistic one at some points with his friends.
Well, yeah, he like tries to portray that at some time, like when there's women aboard, like at the table or something. He's like, or like when he's at dinner with the artsy people or whatever. It's like he has a line in there where he talks about how he just wants to fit in, or he's really angry at Reese Witherspoon, and he's like, I just want to fit in. And, like, that's the whole point of, like, Patrick Bateman around people or whatever. He's just desperately trying to be like, let me tell you about Phil Collins or whatever. Like, I want to do whatever it takes to be the coolest, most fitting in, most on top of things person in the social crowd or whatever. And then, you know, so that means one thing when he's in front of the artsy people eating prawns on a plate or whatever. And it means another thing whenever he's at the club smoking with his boys. And he's like... Because at the early conversation, he was like, "We need gender equality to end apartheid and all these things," and then when he's at the table with the boys, they're all talking about like women don't have personalities. I've never met a woman with a personality unless she was ugly. You know what I mean? And it's just like these two completely different takes where he's like he has like, you know, rational ethical mode where he's like trying to please people, and then when he's like just with other yuppies where he's like, nope. It's sexism time.
It's like so crazy because he tries to fit in, but also he wants to be recognized as the best, right? Because I love how insecure he starts to get whenever he notices if other people have better stuff than him. Like, it's the one, I think it's his biggest tick he has, is anytime someone's better than him.
Right.
Because he is a bit of an egomaniac.
Right. I mean, even just going back to that scene where he was talking to the artsy folks at the table with the other people, and he was talking about, like, we need to end materialism or whatever, and somebody laughs at him. You can tell that that's, like, the front he's putting up, and then he goes back to his, like, $1 million apartment with all his fancy shit, and he's really obsessing about how Paul Allen's place is slightly more expensive than his, you know what I mean?
So I think again, because there is like no strong narrative. It's not like,
Yeah.
oh, doing this. It's just more of an
It's
experience
a really
of
like soft plot. Yeah, yeah.
I feel like you don't really have to have a strong plot for this film for it to be entertaining and engaged, because it's just more watching like what in the world's going to happen next to Patrick Bateman.
I think this is my new example to point people to whenever they talk about, like, because a lot of people focus too much on plot, especially in like genre movies or whatever. They'd be like a lot of people, and this might be a hot take example, will point to like Game of Thrones or something and be like, last season sucked because the plot was bad. And I was like, no, that's not why it sucked. It did suck. The plot made sense of like the end of Game of Thrones or something. I won't spoil that in case for whatever reason you haven't watched it. It's still a worthy experience because the characters are great. The settings are great. You know what I mean? There's other things that are like why you watch a show or something. And I think this is a great example of like the plot. Like if you tried to write down that plot on paper, it would be like, what? You know, there's not much to it, but it's an amazing movie for all the other things that make up a movie.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of amazing, I think one of the strongest things this film has going for it is the music. Just the song choices they have, and just the soft piano they have at the beginning and end of the film. I feel like every song was appropriate, and also making Patrick Bateman just obsess over music, like just being able to know everything about a band and its album and the history behind it.
And even like the music choices are awesome because they're all like the most sterile music you can think of. You know what I mean? It's like Phil Collins, Huey Lewis in the News. He's talking about Whitney Houston and like just like pretty like pop. You know, like it's there's not a lot of harsh edge to anything that he's talking about. Meanwhile, he's like cutting people off. You know, so like that's the music that he's obsessive over, but it's not like, you know, it's not the music you think of as a killer, and it's not quite as like cliche as like classical music while I'm killing somebody or whatever. It's like just like playing like Phil Collins during like, you know, some murder scenes or whatever. I just think that's awesome.
Yeah, okay. And I feel like we could talk about this in a non-spoilery territory, because I feel like most people going into this film know that he's a killer of some sort specifically, but
it's on the box art, baby.
Like yeah, exactly, holding a knife and everything. I feel like whenever it comes to people that play these psychos and stuff, I mean, there's been good examples. Like I think Breaking Bad has great examples of people that are psychopaths or even sociopaths. And I feel like there are bad examples, because again, there is like the classical music, like, oh my goodness, he's into uncouth things like killing people but listens to Mozart. Go on. You know, I feel like it's almost become cliche, and it's like, oh, how original. You know, you're not a monster, you're an upperclassman. But with Patrick Bateman, it doesn't feel like that. It feels like his very own character. And it feels very in line. Like, you believe he is able to, like, hurt and kill people as he does, and, you know, just still be the same. Like, I don't feel like it's no Jekyll and Hyde thing. He's literally just coasting as the same person.
It does feel like he has, you know, a psychosis. He has some sort of problem in his brain, and that he expresses, you know, like, it makes me, I just need violence, because it feels like everything else in his life is so tight and clean, and like, this is, I gotta talk on the numbers and do my crossword or whatever. He's just like so sharp businessman, and the most major conflicts are where you're gonna get a dinner reservation that night, and like just his mind trying to escape from that world just like goes to homicide. You know what I mean? It just goes like, I gotta break out, I gotta do something that means something. You know what I mean?
So I think that's definitely just one of the strongest attributes, is the way they characterize just his psychosis overall, and the fact it feels organic and not like, you know, I feel like you just copied and paste this from somewhere else, which it helps that it was like from the book there specifically. So there was a different perception as opposed to Hollywood's perception of like, ooh, cool psychopath. Overall. And one other thing that I really like about this film is the dialogue, which I'm not sure how much of it straightly from the book was written just for the film there, but I mean, I might argue it's one of the strongest aspects of this film entirely, because there's just so many. I mean, that's why there's so many memes about it. The lines just punch. I mean, that's why you constantly make like, let's see Paul Allen's card.
Yeah. There's so much of the dialogue. Yeah, it does feel really like like it's ripped from literature. You know what I mean? Like it seems crafted, whereas you don't necessarily get that style of dialogue, especially in current movies, because a lot of it, like, especially like large box office experiences, are kind of borrowing from like that. I don't know what you call it, like the Marvel movie dialogue experience or whatever, where it's like there's funny dialogue in there or whatever, and like people are always giving zingers back and forth, but like they're like it's like buddies telling jokes or whatever. And this one is there's so many great zingers, but it's like within the character, like they're mad at this line or whatever, but it's like, you know, like one of my favorites is when they're doing drugs in the bathroom and the guy in the stall next to him's like, "Will you keep it down in here? I'm trying to do drugs." And they're like both doing drugs side by side. It's just like the way it's delivered. And then the guy gets real mad. He's like, "Oh, I'm trying to crawl over the shoulder. Like, fuck you." And calling him fucking homophobic slurs and stuff. And Christian Bale has to pull him back in. It's like, "No, let's do another line of coke." You know? Like just the little like nuances in the dialogue there is something that is not often replicated, not often hit. They attempted for, I think, a lot in times in movies, but not. It doesn't hit like this. It just feels crafted.
No, absolutely. And there's one tidbit, because I know you talked about Christian Bale's method acting, and this kind of plays to the dialogue. But you know, at the beginning, whenever he's monologuing about his how he gets ready for the day and how he stays fit, he followed that exact same regiment.
Yeah.
Really? He did every one of those things. Because you're like, man, that's excessive. No, he actually did it.
1,000
just to really get into the mind of Patrick Bateman.
I laughed whenever he said it's like, I could do up to 1,000 now. And he's talking about how many crunches he could do in the morning or whatever. And I was like, man, that guy's poor back doing 1,000
I know. I have a hard time just doing like 20 of them without keeling over.
Right.
So I can't even imagine doing 1,000.
Yeah.
Because
just the amount of time that would take. Not even if you didn't burn it all, just like doing 1,000. Like,
well, for sure. And I mean, it paid off. I mean, I think he's more ripped in this film than in Batman.
Hot. Yeah. He's tight. One thing I did appreciate about this movie is there's probably just as much like homoerotic imagery as there is like you know, female forms. So that's nice. You get to, like, right up in the beginning, you get to see Christian Bale's ass multiple times, and he's like always naked for some reason, and he's just like immaculately crafted, and I appreciate that in a movie where there's also like a lot of titties. So
Oh my god. And speaking of seeing the imagery like that, I feel like cinematography wise, it's also done so well.
Yeah.
Because like it'll give you like the straight shots, but also the way it decides to shoot certain films. Like obviously I love him listening to his headphones and just how it zooms in to him. Like the cinematography is super on point.
Yeah. I think it makes so much of it meme worthy. One of the memes that's going around right now, it's having a little bit of a resurgence, I think, is the scene where he's walking down the hallway listening to Walking on Sunshine on his headset or whatever, going to his office. Oh man, I've been seeing a lot of just that, because it's like such a great still, you know, of him like jamming with his Walkman on or whatever, and people say like me going to the fridge at 2 a.m. to eat shredded cheese or whatever, you know, just there's so many memeable moments.
I hadn't heard that shredded cheese one. That's so good. Oh yeah, but I think it's something good. Like if it's so good that you're like, I can make a meme out of this.
Yeah.
Because I think like whenever it comes to the world of memes, it's like sometimes you can take something that's obviously just bad and do something, but then if you take something that's like well done,
right,
it's also ripe for meme potential, which I
feel like the subtle absurdity of every part of that scene, it can be captured in a lot of stills, and that's why you get like these great reaction faces from Christian Bale, because he's like a little bit off his rocker, but everything else looks so clean and sharp that it's prime meme.
No, absolutely. And fortunately, even though there was like a lot of like trying to think, a lot of controversy given the subject material and everything else, it did make a lot of money, it looked like, because it had $7 million for budget and made $34.3 million back.
That's a profit, baby.
So yeah, and that's a good thing, because Lionsgate kind of took the chance on distributing it, because I don't think most big studios would have touched on this film, especially back in 2000.
Yeah, maybe not in 2000.
You know, of course, something like A24 now exists, you know, where they're willing to do more experimental stuff. stuff, but
Right.
I think it's definitely great that it's made a resurgence, probably because of the memes.
Yeah, I can't. I feel like the internet has really fueled this into the cult classic that
Mhm,
it is. If
yeah.
you can call it a cult classic, even it was popular at the time too.
Yeah, no, I think cult classic is like perfectly acceptable to describe this film. So it's definitely great that it's getting a lot in the spotlight because I mean, we've already talked, there's a lot to dissect with this film overall,
Yeah.
and we haven't even gone to spoiler territory.
True.
That's like a whole other kick-a-boodle there. Was there any other thoughts or points you wanted to mention before diving into spoilers? I know there's like a lot to dig in.
There's so much. Yeah, if I get going, then I'll just keep going. So no, I figure let's dive in.
Yeah, okay. Well, and before doing so, why don't we give our wait, actually, before the rating got up,
Okay.
pull it back there a bit. Whenever it comes to horror as a whole, was there ever moments where you were scared of it?
I don't know. I'm trying to think. There might have been maybe. Oh, I guess there was one part with where I was like, it's not scared, like jump scared or something, but like nervous of what was to come. Like that happened a couple times.
Yeah.
Without giving anything away, the part with the cat.
Oh my god. Yeah.
And the ATM machine, I was like, something bad's gonna happen. And it wasn't the same bad thing I was thinking, but I didn't like it.
No, I think that's a perfect way to describe it, is that, whenever it comes to horror, I mean, it's very soft horror. I feel like it's not like, oh, if I'm to show you one horror film, it's going to be this one.
Right.
I feel like The Shining would be a more stronger example of horror, since, again, it dives more into just the isolations and being scared alone. Whereas
if you compare the two, yeah, Shining's definitely probably more horror.
But overall, I'd say it's the soft horror there. But the feeling of something really bad is going to happen was like the pit of my stomach, because again, you get like halfway through the movie and it just really starts amping it up slowly to that moment that you mentioned specifically. So yeah, definitely interesting perspective there. But Aaron, could you please tell the audience what you rate American Psycho?
I almost hate to do this because I've only seen the movie one time. But this is all of my reviews on this podcast are just seeing the movie one time by and large. So I gotta do it. I think this is a 10 out of 10 movie.
Woo, dadgum.
I love this movie.
Man, that's great. Woof. Man, because that's even crazier, because like I know Shining was that 10 out of 10, or was
I said that was like 9.5. Like I was
okay.
like, I was
I
so close,
that.
but I was like, I can't give it a 10.
But this one was just like,
I'm sure if I watched it a few more times, I could find things to gripe about. But like, this is just like a complete experience, and it's so different and so like.
Well, that's
fun.
Good.
Yeah, no, I'm
awesome.
about it.
Man, we just like made history because Aaron just decided this film was a 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
And
it's a great film.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad you had a good time with it.
Yeah, I'm gonna start dressing up like Patrick Bateman, just like I watched Drive or something, and now I think I'm Ryan Gosling. I'm gonna go out and pretend to be Patrick Bateman. I'm gonna pull all the ladies.
Yeah.
And then I'm gonna cut them up.
I don't know, but let's just leave it at picking up the ladies.
Please send this tape to the police. This evidence.
Contact Aaron's lawyer.
I killed them.
So I think I'm going to be making history as well here on the
by
podcast.
Giving it a 1.
Yeah, but it sucks. I hate it. I lied about everything. No, I really like this film a lot. There's just like a couple of things that keeps me from like giving it that 10 overall, but that being said, it still is one of those films that is high up there for me. That's why I give it like a very, very comfortable 8 out of 10 for me. There's a couple of aspects with it that I'm just very like, this is my second time watching it through, and surprisingly enough, first time I watched American Psycho, I didn't like it. It was like, what did I just watch?
Yeah.
Like, it was one of those things that, because I kind of went into the movie thinking it was going to be like, oh, haha, axe, chop, chop thing, and wasn't expecting this deep of stuff, but it had an effect on me where I couldn't get it out of my head. Like, it just kept playing scenes, like, back and forth. playing it in my head, and I was just like, why can't I stop thinking about it?
Right.
Because I didn't like it the first time. Like, I didn't hate it, but it was just like, oh, okay, it's American Psycho, I guess. But it just kept playing and playing. And so then just kind of like, it got in my head so much that I'm like, okay, I need to listen to like a video essay, because I love hearing other people's perspective to help me understand stuff.
Right.
Overall. And again, like, it's not the fact that I feel like you have to spell it out for me, but it's always interesting seeing people dive in. And the more I listened to it, I was picking up, oh my god, that's why it was just picking up there specifically. And that's kind of how Donnie Darko is, where it has stuff that the first time I watched it, it encapsulated me, and it had those moments that I still kept thinking about. I'm like, what does it mean? You know? This one was just more abrasive and unexpected, where I was just like, oh my god, what did I just watch? But because I kept thinking of those scenes over and over again, it was like, I have to like think about this. And so the more I thought about it, the more I realized I think I like American Psycho.
Yeah.
I think I like it a lot. And so that's why it sits comfortably like at an 8 for me. I definitely can understand your 10 out of 10 though. It's like one of those things of like, I totally get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Oh my, it's 10 out of 10. It's not like shocking, like, how dare you?
Egads.
It's just one of those things where I'll probably talk more into maybe potentially why it's not the pure 10 out of 10 for me. Because again, like, if I had watched it the first time, it would have been maybe like a 4 out of 10. Like, there's stuff I liked, but it didn't get. But it's just, the more it just fermented, I just was able to get it up there. So it's the first time in the fact that I actually rated a movie lower than you did. But again, it's not from the fact of like, oh, I don't agree with Aaron. No, I totally understand why he loves this movie, and it makes me excited that it's a 10 out of 10 for him overall.
I just love this movie because before we watched it, I wanted to get in character, so I did coke in the bathroom, and now I'm really excited to...
I thought you said that was Splenda.
It's cut with a little bit of sweet.
My cats are out there. Crack cats. Woo! So yeah, there's our views overall. Aaron obviously gives it the highest of recommendations, and I also tell you, go give it a watch there. Just definitely be warned if you're not prepared for some shocking scenes.
There's that.
It's not the most shocking scenes, like just pure like horror kind of. I'm trying to think of the word.
It's not like grotesque. Well, there's definitely.
It's not doing
stuff.
it for shock value.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't feel unnecessary. Right. So it's.
Oh no! My collection, my house of cards, it's everywhere.
Jerry.
No! What'd you do? Kramer, I worked really hard on my card of towers. You shouldn't have put the cards there, Jerry.
I guess I'm the Joker now.
Oh my god, Michael Richardson as the Joker.
Yeah. You want to know how I got these scars?
Oh my god.
I'm gonna say the N-word.
Okay, we better jump onto spoilers here before we get deep into it. Michael Richardson as the Joker.
Yeah, that's the real. He would be a little too evil.
Yeah, no, too realistic.
Too
far. Heath Ledger, was the perfect boundary of that, and he just crossed that line.
He did.
You want to know what I think of black people?
To the other side.
My father was a black man.
That's kind of the vibe of this movie. Honestly, we just watched a lot of rich racists that are a little crazy. It's the Joker, baby.
It's just, I'm the Joker. Which, I mean, it did have Jared Leto in there.
Yeah, it did have a Joker in there.
Which I think it's his best performance.
He did well, honestly. I mean, I like Jared Leto in some roles. I didn't like him as the Joker, but I liked him here. Yeah.
I definitely liked his role, especially at the very end.
Yeah.
That was my favorite.
Yeah.
We're going to jump to spoilers here now, so get on out of here if you want to watch American Psycho and be surprised.
Shoot.
Okay, Aaron, what you want to talk about first, boy?
Jared Leto died.
Yeah.
He's Paul Allen, and he got axed.
Yeah, because that was the thing. Because as soon as I saw the setup of of Christian Bale like standing behind Jared Leto as Paul Allen on the chair. I'm like, oh, this is the scene.
Yeah.
This is the scene coming up.
I love how, like, and it didn't even click to me initially when it definitely should have, that he's, like, sitting on the chair with, like, newspaper all under him.
Yeah.
And there's, like, cloths over all of the chairs. And he's just, like, drunk, like, sitting, like, obviously in the center of this, like, spot that has been put down as if you're going to, you know, do something very messy on it.
Yeah.
And it didn't even click to me at first until he, like, grabbed the raincoat and the axe or whatever, that I was like, oh, yeah, that's... He just set up a murder scene and put his subject right in the middle of it, and he didn't even notice.
I do love Paul Allen's comment on the papers being like, what, you got a chow? And he's like, no!
Yeah. Yeah. Why do you have the style section taped on the...
Yeah. Oh, I'd probably say it's the most memed scene specifically, I would say. And then, of course, there's the business card thing. But with the scene where he kills Paul Allen, I mean, it's just a well done scene. Everything's so well done about it. And somehow Christian Bale's goofy swerving dance.
Yeah, he's dancing and pointing to the record machine. He's like, you like Huey Lewis in the news? You know?
Oh my god.
It's so good.
Yeah, it's just so well done. Everything, just the way it's shot and just the timing and just hearing Hip to Be Square blasting in the background.
Right, and he's like dancing while he's putting on his murder coat, you know what I mean? And like he's having a good time and he's about to cross the threshold into murder, you know?
I know, and that's the thing too, is the fact that even after, because he just has a snap, because he's like joking with him until he's like, hey Paul! And then he just goes in and starts whacking away and he's just furious, like so much anger. And you only ever see him do that whenever he starts killing somebody.
Right. And I love just like, it's just such a great shot too, where he's like murdering him and all that like blood gets all over his face. Oh, it's so good. His face is just drenched in blood and he just like takes off his little raincoat that he put on, and you know, everything else is clean and his face is just covered in blood, and he's like, goes to drag his body out. And then while doing that finds whatever the really nerdy yuppie guy is.
Yeah.
And he's like, where did you get that overnight bag? Like literally so dragging a dead body into the trunk of a taxi.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why it's memed, and I probably say like that's cinema at its finest, where I feel like the setup's perfect and just everything about it. Like, it's just a scene that's perfect. Yeah. Like, I couldn't have imagined it any other way, and especially whenever he decides to sit on the chair, light a cigar, and just like really revel in killing Paul Allen because of envy. I mean, that's the way I always assumed he'd kill him, is the fact that because Paul Allen had the best business card he's ever seen, and the richer apartment and everything,
the account that he wanted or whatever. And I think the nail in the coffin, so to speak, is like he couldn't recognize him as Patrick Bateman. He kept calling him Michael, whatever.
Yeah, he kept missing. And
he was like, okay, and he just like went along with it all the way to his death, you know what I mean? And every time somebody like doesn't recognize Patrick Bateman as Patrick Bateman, they have some sort of comment about Patrick Bateman, where they're like, that guy's a nerd. And like, they don't even know that they're like, how could they know he's a nerd if they're talking to this guy and they don't even know?
And that kind of plays into like, I mean, this is probably, since this is towards the end, the reveal and stuff, there's a question, because a lot of people had this question before I start talking about it at all. And you've kind of hinted at it a little bit, but towards the end, once the cards are revealed, that everything isn't what it seems to be, like all the murders are gone and everything that Christian Bale had mentioned, everyone's kind of like, what are you talking about? With Christian Bale, do you think he's insane?
It's one of those things that's like, I don't think it answers it for you, or if it does, I didn't pick up on it. Yeah, because there's a definite identity question that, like, I think it's really cemented at that end scene where he's talking to his lawyer, and his lawyer thinks he's someone else. You know what I mean? He's like, "No, I'm Patrick Bateman," and that's when his lawyer's like, "Patrick Bateman, that nerd couldn't do it. That's not funny." And he's like, "No, he's like, you're my lawyer. I'm Patrick Bateman. I killed those guys." And so like identity is at the core of a lot of this, but I don't know if it's like this world refuses to accept the fact that Patrick Bateman is like is a guy that exists and is Christian Bale's character. If he thinks that he's Patrick Bateman but nobody else does, but then like people obviously do because the detective thinks he's Patrick Bateman, and Gene thinks he's Patrick Bateman. There are plenty of people in his life that most of them say he's Patrick Bateman, but then there's so many other people that say that he's not. It's like, well, who is he? Did he get lost in so many identities that he's different things to different people now, or is it just this weird abnormal world of Wall Street that they're in his business that like cleans up his messes, right? Because like he goes back to Paul Allen's apartment and it's all painted over white, and he's like, Paul Allen used to live here, and she's like, no she didn't, no he didn't. You know what I mean? Is it just like anything that's like goes wrong gets covered up and ceases to exist? I don't know. Like it's one of those things that I don't think it solves it for you, but maybe, I don't know. What have you heard about it?
So here's the interesting thing. So the first time I watched the film, I kind of did just more of the simplistic approach of, oh, he's crazy. Yeah, he's crazy. Everything he imagined isn't real and everything. But there was always like those sense of doubts because, again, there are people that just are aware of stuff more so. And so that was the thing interesting that the director, Mary, she mentioned, and I heard this in interviews afterwards, and hearing her response to the ending overall, like, blew my mind and just made me appreciate this film way more. I'm like, oh my god, like, because again, like I've told you multiple times before, sometimes they'll have like these deep complicated stories and it's like, oh well, you didn't get it. And like you mentioned before, like in The Shining, it's like, no, I got it, I just don't like it. Sure. This is the one that once I learned, I was like, oh my god, like just finally seeing the picture. Her response to it is, the thing about American Psycho is Patrick Bateman is not the psycho. The upper class are the psychos. Because if you notice, again, you mentioned like Gene, Detective Defoe. I know that's not his name in the film, but the detective, everything, they seem to be of sane mind. Right. But everyone in the upper class is just insane. And the fact that, you know, you could have a psycho killing people up there, and they're so self-absorbed that they just don't pay attention to it.
Yeah, they don't even know. They don't even know who Patrick Bateman is, much like really. They have an idea of who he is, and it's not even, it doesn't even match the face of Christian Bale in the room. And this is like, these are all people that are making millions together that should know each other.
Well, yeah, and that's a crazy thing too, because like you watch the film, like, and if you watch the film the second time, you'll notice everybody he talks to, you know, you ever been around those people that clearly don't care about talking to you, but they're just talking out loud to have people hear? Nobody pays attention to Patrick Bateman. They're not doing like, you know, oh, how are you doing and stuff. It's just more of a self-absorbed sort of sense and just delusional. Like Patrick Bateman will be making statements and nobody really acknowledges it. They're like, whatever, you know, and they move on. And so because of that self-absorbedness and just delusional being of just being upper class, and all they care about is eating at the finest restaurants, business cards that look exactly the same on the surface, like all this stuff is just almost insanity. And so that's the thing, like once, you know, Christian Bale is trying to admit everything he's done, you know, everyone's just oblivious, like, I don't know what you're talking about, get away from me.
And he's like, he finally does this series of crimes that like there's no way he's gonna get away with. Breaks down, calls his lawyer, admits to killing 20, maybe 40 people. You know, he doesn't even know the number, just this insanity. And he's like, I don't think I'm going to get away with it this time. And then, you know, of course, ends the conversations with, and I'll be on, you know, this bar on Sunday. I'll see you there or whatever.
Yeah.
and then he does, and the guy's like, even with this confession, even with the detective trailing him, that's watching it every move or whatever, they're just like, he's like, no, I killed Paul Allen. He's like, no, you didn't. I just had dinner with Paul Allen 10 days ago. You know. And he's like, no, you didn't, because I killed him.
Yeah, so, like, that's the thing that just made it very interesting, because taking it from the perspective of, he's not crazy, everyone else is basically insane for how, like, detached they are from acknowledging stuff. But it also does play into a lot of what you would consider the climax, and let's talk about your Smitten Kitten clip there specifically.
So, like, the whole movie, of course, it's ramping up where he's getting more and more violent, and he's been violent since the beginning of the movie, right? Like where that scene where he's trying to wash his sheets and he's obviously killed somebody in them or whatever.
Cran apple juice.
Yeah, so he's like, it's obviously like ramping up, and he gets to the point where he's talking about like how he can't control it. He has that scene with Jean where he's like mulling over different ways to kill her, and almost literally pulls the trigger on a nail gun on the back of her head, and realizes like if you don't leave, I'm gonna do something dangerous. And of course they think he's talking about like cheating on his on his fiance, but he's talking about like murdering her. And so he has these moments where he talks about like he can't control it, and that happens at the climax where he's just trying to get some money out of an ATM, and there's a kitten there, and he picks up the kitten, and then the ATM says, "Feed me a kitten." And I was like, oh no. And this old lady walks up and is like, what are you doing? And then he just shoots the old lady. And a cop car pulls up, and he like gets in a shootout with cops, and like runs into his building, shoots the guard shoots the secretary guy at the front, shoots the janitor, goes up to his office, leaves this voicemail. You know what I mean? He's like, there's no way I'm gonna get away with it. And then he gets away with it.
Yeah. And so that's kind of the crazy thing, is the fact that, you know, Christian Bale is certainly crazy. Patrick Bateman does have a lot of like mental issues severely. And again, possibly imagining again, because if we were to take everything in consideration, the ATM would definitely not say "feed me, stray cat." And then,
and he also seems surprised in moments, like when he shot the cop cars and they just exploded.
Yeah, just a huge explosion.
Yeah, he looks at it. He looks at his gun like I did that. You know what I mean? And then like runs off. Like he was like, what? You know? So it's yeah. It's definitely, there's parts of reality that are up for debate. Like, did that happen? You know?
So, and like, again, because it just, by the time you get to the end of the film, it's like so ramped up, because all it started with, the first moment that you really see that, okay, he has some issues, is whenever he's at the bar and the gal's like, you know, we only take cash now or whatever. And he's like going after you, like, you stupid bitch. Like,
I'm gonna kill you.
Yeah, like doing like all that hateful stuff. And then he turns around and he just smiles, and it just
grabs a drink and
goes
gives
away.
her a wink,
and so you're like, did she not hear her because the music is loud? Did he say it in his head? Like, doing all that. And so it's like simple stuff like that, to where then he's chasing a hooker down the hallway with white tennis shoes covered in blood. Like, the whole murder scene that Christy, the hooker, recognizes at Paul Allen's apartment is just insane, as he's just running with a chainsaw.
Yeah, and Paul Allen's apartment gets turned into just like a meat locker full of dead hookers and stuff. And I love when he's chasing her too. He's just butt naked, covered in blood.
Yeah,
with a chainsaw.
Yeah, absolutely. And so like chasing it down, and again, it just kind of plays up to the fact that, you know, she's crying for help and nobody's answering there.
She's beating on the doors, leaving blood everywhere. He has to kill her in a stairwell, and then he still doesn't get caught. Like, what happened? You know?
And so that's what I think whenever I hear like the director talk about just the fact that it's more of the world that's crazy, because again, it's an expensive apartment, overlooks the park. And so just the fact that people are just so ignorant and self-absorbed in themselves, because I mean, you know, like, they're very materialistic and only care about it. It's like, again, like Patrick Bateman's fiance was upset that it wasn't Dorsia's, and stuff. Like, it's just that kind of level of pettiness there, and just absorbing that to where they would ignore like a normal woman's cry for help overall. So I think that adds a lot of layers. And so watching it a second time round with that mentality, it just makes it like, oh my gosh, man, like way more opening there. And what's great is that you mentioned the apartment thing, like whenever he goes back to check for the bodies and everything else like that, that it's all repainted, all cleaned out, and the real estate person is almost kind of menacing. Like,
it's like she's like in on it.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
And so that's the thing. Like, she's in on it. He's like, don't mess this up for me.
Right. And he's like, she's like asking him to leave, and says like, don't do anything rash. But it's not in like a there's a strange guy in this apartment
Mm-hmm.
kind of way. It's like as soon as he mentions Paul Allen, she's like, I know who this guy is, and like, get out of here because I'm cleaning this up. You know what I mean? She feels like the cleanup crew. But...
Yeah, and that kind of adds more of the question of towards the end of the film, whenever Patrick Bateman is talking to his lawyer saying, I killed Paul Allen. He's like, that's not possible. Why not? Because I had lunch with him in London 10 days ago.
Right.
And so it kind of makes you ask the question, did he have lunch, or is it...
Well, yeah, because then there was that detective scene where he said that, like, he was talking to whoever, and he was like, he was like, well, was Paul Allen spotted in London? He's like, yes. And then they were like, whoa. And he's like, but it was a mistake or whatever. They mistook some guy for Paul Allen or whatever. Just like Patrick Bateman's always getting mistaken for whoever, you know?
Yeah, and not to mention, like, Patrick Bateman is constantly, even though he has a planner saying like, oh, that's not possible because Thursday I went here, but he's constantly changing where he went.
He's just like and making it up on the fly all the time. Yeah,
because and then of course whenever you see at the very end Gene flipping through the planner, and it becomes very grotesque,
right? And you see a decline there too, because it starts out there's some dates and then just like a doodle here or there, and then as you flip the pages, it's just like every month is just full of just pictures of women being disavowed that he drew in a pen. You know? Yeah, just like sexually tortured and everything else. It's like so brash, and he keeps like he makes like some reference to like Jeffrey Dahmer or something in the beginning, and people are like, that's a little weird, but okay. And then by the end of it, like every conversation, he's just like, did you know Ted Bundy had a this kind of dog?
Yeah, and so I think that's just a thing that makes Patrick Bateman overall super interesting whenever it comes to doing that, because he's not straightforward killer like and stuff. He's not like, oh, chop chop, kill kill because I hate you, which is not bad. I mean, trust me, I love Jason Voorhees, and that's pretty much his MO.
Sure.
But with Patrick Bateman, one of my favorite scenes, and it's probably my favorite scene in the entire movie, is whenever he decides to invite Gene over for dinner, and you don't really know what his motive is behind it.
Right.
There, because he hasn't been like the best to Gene, but Gene is like the only person I would say that's genuinely nice to him, because even the fiance is self-absorbed in her own fantasies of, I want to get married, I want to have kids, and then she's constantly like drugging it up specifically, like just so self-absorbed. Then you have Gene, who just genuinely wants to try to connect with Patrick Bateman, because I mean, he's gorgeous looking, very successful. And he's like
her boss-ish, like she's his secretary or whatever, and she's trying to like do good and manage his life or whatever, but he's just like a giant pig to her all the time.
Well, and that's just the interesting thing too, is like whenever he offers where would you like to eat? Like, she doesn't know any idea. And of course she has, I love the Dorsia's joke throughout the entire movie. The fact that he can't get a reservation at Dorsia's to save his life, but Paul Allen can.
Right.
And so that's the one place that she mentions.
Right, because that's what all the office hubbub is about or whatever. So she's just like, I don't know, Dorsia's? She suddenly tries to put a foot into the door of like this weird upper class world, and it just like is the one wrong answer.
Yeah, the one wrong answer. But he's still like, he's just so, I love Christian Bale's silence as he just smiles. He's like, sure, and then he calls and he's like, I need a reservation for 2 at 9. Sorry, we're booked. Great, thank you.
And she like knows something's not up, because she's like, you didn't leave a name.
Yeah.
And he's like, they know me.
Yeah, why don't we get drinks at my place first? And so leading up to like her being at the apartment there and just kind of getting to talk about herself, like obviously Patrick Bateman has the intention of killing her specifically up until the moment that his fiance leaves like a voicemail there, and then he decides to not do it, and then decides to let her go. Like that was one of my favorite scenes watching it the first time around, because it was so unexpected, because I'm just so used to like these psychopaths just killing for killing's sake.
Right. But so, there's like still some element of like human in Patrick Bateman.
Like Gene is the one person that he let go overall, and so I think it's like a very powerful scene, because again, it's just like, do you think I should leave? And he's like, Yes.
Yeah,
Like, and
yeah.
again, like you mentioned before, he was saying, I'll hurt you,
Right.
but not in the emotional sense, more like the nail gun to the skull
Right.
sense. So I felt like, scenes like that is just what really makes this movie a strong one, that just makes it a good time overall. I think the thing for me is the fact that it's just not an easy watch.
Yeah.
That's kind of the trade-off
It's
there.
a little heady.
Because,
yeah.
like, with The Shining, it's not an easy watch, but it just enwraps me in this world overall, and it just has so many, like, iconic music scenes where it's just visually pleasing to me 24/7. But with American Psycho, it definitely starts to get really dark. And there's also just a lot of scenes of just the talking and stuff, which is
Yeah.
not bad at all and stuff. It's just, again, it's just yuppie filler.
Right.
That's the best way. And I know that's the point of the movie.
Right, yeah.
So, like, whenever it comes to you saying it's a 10 out of 10, I'm like, I completely understand where you come from. And so I could definitely respect that. It's like how, you don't like Scream and I like Scream just for different reasons. Like, different notes hit us.
Sure.
Overall. And so whenever I place it like 8 out of 10, there isn't like too many scenes that's like, oh well, that was terrible and stuff. There's just like a lot of long scenes, which is like why like during the film I was like, okay, I know they're going to be talking a while and I know exactly what they say, so I'm just gonna get up and like refill my drink there, because I knew exactly what was going on. So there's just a lot of like down moments as opposed to The Shining, where every second I feel like, man, I'm just being led through. Yeah, exactly. But
I feel like Shining like is like reeling you in the whole time, and this one is more like pulling you through. You know what I mean?
Yes, that is the perfect way to describe it. And so I feel bad because it's like one of those movies I'm like, I really just want to place it like higher, like a 9 and stuff. But like, feel like a very comfortable 8 is where I'm at, because it's one that I'm going to revisit again. I mean, I rate Friday the 13th like an 8, Nightmare on Elm Street an 8, and I'll still watch those films. Yeah. It's just not one of the films that I'm like, if I can only choose one film to watch repeatedly, I'm not sure if American Psycho would be one, because I mean, there's also a lot of uncomfortable scenes there overall, like whenever you do see the dead bodies everywhere and just kicking, like, I love the scene, but it's just like, man, it would just it just starts to get like really crazy. But it's also, again, just how dialogue heavy it is again. And if you already know the beats and stuff, for me it's just, I mean, it's like just saying your like favorite fruit, like overall. There's no like definitive fruit that's just like, oh, this is the god tier, and if you say no, then you're a jackass, like type deal.
It's the durian. It's the best fruit ever made.
Really? I have not had a durian.
Yeah, me neither. I just hear they're really smelly, so I thought that'd be a funny one to say.
You. Don't look at it. I want you to eat it. So that kind of dives into more like why I can't give it the full 10 out of 10, but I understand why people give it a full 10 out of 10. Like, there's some movies that people rate like, oh, 10 out of 10, and I'm like, no, I'm sorry. I feel like I'm missing something, everything. But those are about the only few things, is that there's just so many slow moments there while I'm just kind of waiting. Kind of like with Halloween, like there's a lot of lulls there, except I would choose to watch American Psycho over Halloween any day of the week. Yeah. There specifically, just because like the lulls are still entertaining, because that was one of my favorite moments, is that watching a movie, there's just so many lines that got a good laugh out of you. And it wasn't even meant to intentionally be funny. It's just the fact that
it's just all the dialogue's funny. Just how like out of touch they all are, or just like some of the most wildly offensive things that they say. It's just like casual conversation it's nuts.
No, it's great. I love how just so brazen they are, and how audacious they are to say such horrible things. And there,
just like,
because
not like whatever the opposite of down to earth is, up in space.
Yeah.
Just how like disconnected they are with like the reality of the world.
No, it's definitely I could agree with that. Also, I love, again, the self-absorbed things. One of other potential victims, I think Patrick Bateman was going to go after I can't think of the guy's name, but the nerdy guy as well. As soon as he reveals his business card, he's like, oh, you've got to be kidding me. He has the best card. He goes to the bathroom and he's going to kill him as he's at the urinal. He's like, why, Patrick? I didn't know you were into me. Like, just, and then Patrick Bateman wants nothing to do with it. He's like,
well, I can't kill a gay person now. That's a hate crime. Gotta go back to killing women.
Oh, just the way it just spins out of control there. And yeah, that's kind of how it is towards the end, like how crazy it gets. Overall, it's definitely over the top there, where the first time watching it, I'm like, what is going on? But I think there's another aspect to American Psycho is that there are definitely some hard scenes to watch overall, like I mentioned, like with the bum and the dog at the beginning.
That one's a little hard.
That was just like, oh. So I think that's just another thing that, for me, it's not like a film like, let's just watch American Psycho.
Right, no, it's not one I would just like bring out on family night. You know what I mean? But
hey mom, about American Psycho.
Woo! Woo! Christian Bale's ass. No, but it is. I feel like a lot on the first watch, it's not that hard to watch, just because so much of what happens is like hard to tell it's coming. You know what I mean? It's like the homeless guy and the dog. You knew something bad was gonna happen, but like I didn't think he was gonna like stomp on the dog's neck. And they don't really show it, but I was like, yeesh. You know? What I mean?
It was brutal.
And now I can see like rewatching that and knowing it's coming, being like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But like on a first watch, a lot of that, with the exception of like the cat scene, where I was like, oh god,
please no,
he's gonna do something to this cat.
Because he holds the cat up to the dispenser and a gun.
Puts a gun to this kitten's head. So like, yeah, with the exception of that scene, but even that one, they're like really cognizant of like just suddenly giving you a curveball. He doesn't end up doing anything to the kitten. He like shoots an old lady that walks up. So like, yeah, it's interesting. Like I think on a first watch, I really didn't expect most of it. You know what I mean? Like you get an idea of the trajectory it's going, but I didn't have the specifics of like what's about to happen. Even like all the ways he's mulling over killing Gene, and then he doesn't kill Gene. It like throws you curveballs in this moment.
Yeah, because that's the thing. It's not straightforward. They could have easily just been like, haha, Psycho and stuff. And speaking of which, did you know they made a sequel to American Psycho?
I did know they made it, and like I can see how they did now, but I don't see why. Because this was like the perfect film, and I wouldn't ruin it with another one.
Oh, they did ruin it. Oh, it's a.
Is Christian Bale back? Did they get the same cast, or it's? Oh yeah, I figured. I was like, I
no,
don't know.
It stars Mila Kunis.
Why?
Great question.
Was there book material that they like?
No.
They just made it. Of course they did.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even count that.
They weren't even. It wasn't even going to be American Psycho sequel, but they're like, hey, American Psycho sold really well. If we say American Psycho 2, that'll sell even more well.
Woo, Hollywood.
Yeah. So, expect that possibly never, or maybe.
I mean, I'm always down to watch bad movies. We really haven't watched like bad movies. The lowest score I've given is like a 4, which is just barely below average. But
yeah, I think the last one you gave a 4 was. I'm trying to remember. Was it
1 to Halloween, and I think I gave it to Scream too.
Yeah, I think that was Scream Halloween, because My Bloody Valentine was a 5, right?
Maybe I did get. Maybe it was My Bloody Valentine.
Yeah, maybe Scream was.
Scream might have been higher.
Yes, yeah, might have been a 5, and then My Bloody Valentine. But yeah, nothing truly trash. Which I don't really want to start the series watching trash. That's why I'm trying to choose acclaimed stuff. But who knows? Maybe a trash episode incoming.
Maybe so.
Yeah.
I'm always down to watch whatever. I've watched a few like bad old horror movies that are like cult classics because they're bad and old. You know what I mean?
But nothing like truly bad, which is good. Yeah. It's good. I try to keep it afloat there, and definitely makes me very excited that you were like, I'm hesitant to say it, but 10 out of 10 film right now.
Yeah.
So I think that's great.
I mean, again, obviously only watched it once, but I just couldn't think of anything you could do with that movie to make it a better version of that movie.
Yeah, and coming from me watching it the second time, I really like it still. I mean, like I said, even though it isn't pure 10 out of 10, it's only just because of the hard moments, like, okay, here comes this scene. Kind of like having
But that's horror, man. I mean,
for sure.
There's definitely... This by far was like, this and Shining and Alien are like movies where like I didn't like cringe. Like it wasn't like a viscerally like getting me like a lot of horror movies do, where they like focus on the gore,
for sure,
the torture, the body horror kind of stuff. Like none of that was really focused on here. So I was like, cool. It's like, so in that aspect, it's a lot lighter than the other material that we've covered in this podcast.
Oh, yeah.
It's not like a clean movie that you should show the kids, you know what I mean, by any means. It's definitely R-rated. But it's yeah, I mean, I didn't think it was like that bad compared to what you think
Oh,
of
yeah.
as like a
No, I think
like
it's
a
more
Saw or something.
Yeah,
you know?
I think it's more of just the emotional as opposed to the physical. Because again, especially with that bum scene where he's like, "Hey, why are you homeless?"
Yeah, he's just
Yeah.
like, you need to work. You know what I mean?
And he's like leading them on, like he's emotionally torturing
Right,
them
right.
overall there. And so it's a great ride, but again, there's like shove the kitten in the ATM. So with American Psycho, any other points you wanted to tap on overall or anything else?
Yeah, just I guess the last thing I wanted to narrow in on is how interesting I found it that like so like you're talking about how the upper class is crazy, and obviously Christian Bale's character is also crazy because he's murdering folks, but it seems almost like his like murder is a way for him to try to get out of this crazy realm that he's in. It's almost like his escape vessel, and it doesn't work. And at the end, he kind of monologues about that, like he's like, and none of it mattered. You know what I mean? And he's like sinks right back into the world of the Psycho because he's like. It seems like he's desperately trying to just get out by murdering people, and then he's like waiting for someone to discover that he's murdered people, and he confesses everything to his lawyer, and he gets more and more brash, and he starts trying to kill people that are close to him, you know, people that are his colleagues, and like, of course they're going to find out it's him, but they just paint over it and keep moving on, and it's like he can't escape the truly psychotic world that is Wall Street, you know, that is his job.
Oh, I think that's you hit it right on the head there.
Yeah.
I think it's great. And again, like one of the other scenes I found great is whenever he's having the affair with the other woman and they just finished having sex, she's so like unattached to it. So I was like, well, if I don't see you before Easter, see ya. Like,
yeah.
And it has been a long-term affair. Like there was no passion behind it.
Right, and like she's about to get married. Like they're both cheating on. They're both engaged to other people, and they're cheating on their fiancés with each other. And yeah, she like seems to be reaching out, like wanting some more connection with him as a human being for once, for the first time in the movie, because most of the movie she's like drugged up and he's like struggling to keep her awake, much less interested. And at that point she's like, it seems like she's like realizing, and she's sober, and she wants to like reach out and like connect with him as a human, and he's just like uninterested in that. He's like, whoa, something besides sex, no thank you. And yeah, and so she like almost hits that where she like asks him, she's like, wait, you know, Patrick, and she like wants to ask him something, and he's like, what? And she's like, nothing. And then he's like, okay, bye. You know,
yeah,
like he doesn't want to dig into whatever she was trying to say, and she realizes that like it doesn't matter what she would say, that he doesn't care. So like it's a weird sort of like another illustration of the missed connections, but like somebody besides Patrick's finally like cognizant of how disconnected she is from everything.
No, and I think that's a great kind of overall idea, because you don't see it too many times in movies to where it's just people's around them that's a problem. Because again, if you look at it surface level, it's easy just to infer it's just like, oh, it was just fake all along. Which I think if that was the case, it takes away more from the film. If it's just like, haha, I'm crazy cuckoo man.
Right.
As opposed to he's struggling with all these violent tendencies and wants to hurt people. Because, I mean, he gets a joy out of killing and even torturing people.
Right.
So I feel like just having that cry for help and feeling like he has no escape and he has no one there. Because the only people that will reach out to him, he's afraid of killing, because it's just uncontrollable urge. And again, he only cries out as soon as he's really starting to lose it at the end of the film.
And that's when he seems to be like actually experiencing emotion, you know. He's much less like haha ooh zinger, you know, guy at the end of the film. He's like manic and sweating and all these things, and that's when he finally like breaks up with his fiance that he's been ignoring the entire film, like actively trying to ignore, and every time she mentions a wedding he's like, shut the fuck up. Like it's just a bizarre relationship, and he finally just like ends it, and even she won't let him end it for like he's like, no, you dumb bitch, I'm leaving you. She's like, you're not serious. No, I'm fucking serious. She's it's wild that like even then she's like, it takes her, you know, him saying like I am breaking up with you like 3 times before she's like, wait, really?
Yeah, like it took so many times.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so bizarre that he's finally having like emotional realizations and like human emotions through the most extreme means possible, which is murdering people.
No, absolutely. And so it's kind of seeing how he deals with this struggle is just drawing out his murderous fantasies, or actual murders in this case, like especially going to the restaurant, he's coloring on the paper sheet.
He's drawing his last victim,
with the chainsaw impaled her. So
great kill, by the way.
Yeah, super great kill. And I feel like just the subtle stuff, like whether it's just because he never like casually watches porn in the way that you would expect most people to watch porn as. He's just like listening to it in the background, and then even whenever he's having sex with individuals, all he cares about is himself. He doesn't even look at them overall. He's only obsessed with himself, that he's able to do all of this there. So
raging narcissist,
and of course
a pool of other raging narcissists.
Yeah, and of course working out to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, just those slight subtle hints and throw in there, I think just overall makes it a very special film. And who knows, it might be something that grows on me more and more, because like I said, I initially started not liking the film until like thinking about it so much that I'm like, man, you know what, I actually think I like this film. So who knows, it could go up. I could see this easily going up to a 9 if there was like a lot of scenes I'm like, man, that's just good every time, because that's how The Shining was the first time I watched it. It was just like, man, that was crazy. And then it was just kind of each time I watched it, just enhanced the experience more and more. So I'm curious if you ever decide to go back and watch it, because I imagine you'll probably want to show some of your friends the movie.
If they haven't seen it, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And just kind of overall dig into it. And again, since I guess it's probably one of your favorite films now, right?
Yeah, no, I had a good time with it. It'll definitely be on my rewatch list.
Ooh, heck yeah! That's a first time must rewatch film. Overall,
well, I say that's not necessarily the gilded status you might think, because like the last movie that I just like desperately needed to rewatch was Star Wars Episode 8.
Okay, you kind of scared me a bit. I was like, episode...
No, 9 was like the one that I was most desperate to never rewatch.
Yeah, same.
8, when it came out in theaters, I watched it and I was like, wow, that was interesting. I was like, I feel like I need to like see it again before I have an opinion on it. And so I did that, and I was like, I liked it a lot less that time. And then I went and saw it a third time, and I was like, wow, this movie sucks.
Oh, no. Well, let's hope that American Psycho doesn't have that train.
No, I don't think it will. No, you can tell the difference in quality between the two films mentioned. So.
All right, well, awesome. Well, I feel like overall it was a great episode getting to talk about American Psycho, and so I guess comes the part where we give teasers about what the next episode's going to be.
Oh, yeah.
And this is actually one that you probably already know what's coming up, because this was your idea.
Was it mine? Oh, okay.
Yes, it was your idea about a certain movie that's coming up that's actually going to be celebrating its 100th birthday. Yeah, so you want to tell the audience what we'll be Poppin the Scary with?
Is it Nosferatu?
Yeah,
I've always wanted to see it ever since that SpongeBob episode.
Yeah, just like going like
flicking off the lights. Nosferatu.
All right.
But that's one of I'm excited about that, because it's one of those things that I've heard a lot about, I've read a lot about, the context, the history, the filmmaker. Never seen it. Yeah,
no, I haven't actually seen it either. It's been on the to-do list, so I'm more than happy that you wanted to watch it. So thank you guys listening for this episode of Poppin the Scary. Tune in next time whenever we're going to be Poppin the Scary with Nosferatu. Woo. Thank you for watching this.
For watching.
Do you want to go to Dorsia's after this?
You got a reservation?
Of course. They know me.
Oh.
Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube, Castbox, or iTunes platforms to stay up to date when new episodes drop. To see what Aaron and I are up to, check out our respective Twitter accounts. For me, it is @ColeKirkVA, and for Aaron, it is @AnimalGameDev. Thank you all so much for listening to our podcast. We'll speak to you all again next time when we're poppin' the scary.